Welcome to the Zen of Reffing Roller Derby Lesson 3B, Hand Signals. I'm Axis of Stevel, the author of the training manual. I'm filming this on May 15th, 2018. The content of this presentation is up to date as of this recording. Should this video become obsolete or replaced by newer information, I'll place a link on the screen to where you can find more information or a new video. As always, you can find the latest version of my full training manual at www.tinyearl.com/zenreffing. A quick disclaimer: the WFTDA, MRDA, and JRDA are not responsible for the content of this training manual or this presentation, nor do they make any claims as to the accuracy of its content. For more information on everything I say in this lesson, read the WFTDA Officiating Cues, Codes, and Signals document. You can find the URL in the show notes below this video on YouTube. I'm covering most of the important stuff, but there's more in the document that I can present in a single lesson. So Lesson 3B, Hand Signals. Hand signals are standardized in roller derby, but not strictly so. You're going to want to learn these expressively, meaning you can perform them such that others can understand them, and you need to learn them receptively. When other people demonstrate the hand signal, you can understand what they're trying to say. Now, I said these are not standardized, strictly speaking. You can adjust the hand signals, particularly the positioning or making minor modifications. For example, if you physically cannot make a hand signal, like if your hands are incapable of doing something, or you're missing a finger, or whatever. If you physically cannot make a signal, not a problem. If you need to make a major change, for example, you're missing your entire hand and you're trying to demonstrate scoring, or you need something to demonstrate lead jammer or something and you have no hand, that's fine. You can certainly serve as a referee and you can do these things, but you just should discuss the major changes during the captain's meeting so that both teams can be aware of the changes that you're making to your signals. There are also bonus points for awesomeness if you take the time to go talk to the announcers to explain the difference in your hand signals as well. Another reason you might make minor modifications to a hand signal would be to communicate to people at a distance or communicate in a certain direction. Now let's talk a little about presentation of hand signals. You want your hand signals to be crisp and clear and not just sort of sloppy and wavy arms like Kermit the Frog yelling, "Yay!" When his next guest was on the Muppet Show. So, for example, this is a sloppy hand signal. If you know the hand signals, you know what I'm signing, but at the same time, it kind of looks bad. It's just kind of, it's bad. What you want to do is make them crisp and clear so that each hand signal is distinct from one another. It can be a little tricky to do in the moment, particularly if there's a lot going on in the game or you're having to skate fast while you make these signals, but try to do it as best you can. You can also hold your hand signals higher than normal, like as we talked about, so people at this distance can see, or longer than normal as necessary. For example, the cut hand signal was this, which I just did, but if you want to hold it up so that people at a distance can see it, you might hold it over your head. Up there, so you can hold it up here so people can see it. Similarly, you might angle a cut towards, like if a penalty tracker is off to one side or something, you might angle it such that they can see. You can also do things like, you sign to the person you're trying to, direct off the track for committing a cut penalty, but then you hold it up higher afterwards. So it would be like, and then you'd hold it up like this. Or, this, and then just hold this for a while you go back to looking for other things. You're just basically allowing anybody that looks at you, such as the announcers that might take a second or two to locate where the whistle came from, that they have a chance to read your hand signal. You can repeat these cues, repeat these hand signals also as necessary, both for immediate effect, for example, to send someone to the penalty box, and for context, to make sure that others, such as the officials and such, have a chance to read what you're saying. As we said yesterday with the verbal cues, you should consider who your target audience is. You're not just trying to get a skater up the track, you're trying to alert other officials, the announcers, their coaches on the bench, fans in the audience. You want everyone to be aware of what these are. It's very difficult for them to hear your verbal cues, particularly if they're at a distance, but your hand signals, if done loudly, distinctly, and held high, will give an opportunity for them to see what it is that you're communicating. Now let's talk a little bit about the hand signals, the actual signals themselves. Now, as I said yesterday, you didn't need to memorize verbal cues at the time. yesterday, maybe the last lesson. I don't know when you actually saw it, but I recorded it yesterday. You didn't need to actually memorize the verbal cues at the time because you were going to learn them now while you're doing this. So now's a good time to start memorizing them. I want you to match the phrase with the gesture that I'm going to do over here. So I want you to start get in the habit of reciting these phrases out loud as you perform these hand signals so that you're matching what they actually mean. So now here are some of the penalty hand signals. Back block, high block, low block, head block, forearm, leg block, illegal contact, direction. Please note with direction, your elbow is holding still. You're just simply shifting back and forth like this. It should be a little bit like a windshield wiper, perhaps maybe 30 to 45 degrees out from your body. So that's direction. Multiplier. Illegal position. You want to start very fast with a 90-degree angle on your arm and chop it down like an axe. Illegal position can also be done with the other arm, depending on which direction you're facing and where the skater is that you're trying to direct off the track. Cut. Interference. Illegal procedure. Misconduct. Those penalty cues are often followed by additional cues with subsequent either instructions or explanations as to the level of the offense. For example, report to the box. This is like a little Nike swish. Outward, slightly outward from the body and forward. It should be distinct from whatever it is you're doing before. So, for example, forearm, report to the box. Cut, report to the box. And it shouldn't be like, something, like, remember, avoid the sloppy hand signals. Report to the box, by the way, in prior versions was referred to as penalty. So you will sometimes still hear referees, refer to this as the penalty hand signal. They're just used to thinking about it. The hand signal didn't change, just the name for the hand signal did. Also, expulsion. Take your thumb, put it out, over your shoulder. So if you were to say, for example, forearm, penalty, or report to the box, same thing, or forearm, expulsion. Now, something you need to keep in mind that only a head referee can expel skaters from a game, so you're really not going to be doing this very often in a game setting. It's actually very rare that that gets signed at all, but you're going to want to know what it means in case you see somebody else do it. Now some instructions or warnings that you often have to address to a skater. Stay on the track. You'll notice that I'm pointing out in the direction of the skater and then swooping my arm in, directing in the direction of the track. It could also be done with the left hand if necessary. Return to the track. It's the same thing. Stay on the track is when they're already on the track and you don't want them to leave. Return to the track is when they have left the track, but you're instructing them to return. The opposite of those two, go to your bench. You're pointing roughly at the skater and gesturing back towards the bench area. Depending upon how you're facing, the bench area might be behind you, so, generally do your best. You can direct them sort of like off the track. As long as they're hearing your verbal cue of go to the bench, they should understand what you mean. No pack. No pack is traditionally done. You should be like the goal posts in a game of American football over there, like that. You want to have your arms out. This should be approximately 90 degrees on both sides. Pack is here, with your left and right hands both pointing at the front and back of the pack. Out of play. This is a warning. Again, note the 90-degree angle here and the arm. You should use the arm closest to the track. If you're the front IPR who's skating backwards, that's typically going to be your left hand. If you're the rear IPR and you're skating forwards, that will be your right arm. And now some hand signals about jammer communication. I'm going to have to duck down for this one. Lead jammer. Normally, obviously, you wouldn't be ducking down. I have to because of where my, where my camera is. Your hand should be making an L as you look towards it. The L should be basically directly above your head. Your arm should be high up in the air such that you could like bump it against the side of your helmet. Now, if you're sprinting or going fast in a game, it can be difficult to hold your hand directly up, and sometimes it tends to go forward and out a little bit. That's okay, because we understand that you need to stay in position, but you generally want to keep it way up in the air where everybody can see it. Something to keep in mind, some referees will get a little lazy and will make like kind of an L shape. It almost looks like the out of play sign, except they're doing the L, or maybe it's a little angled up. This is kind of lazy. It's not technically correct. Some leagues consider it acceptable, and that is their league's prerogative. I consider that a little sloppy, and I don't think that you should do that. So get in the habit of holding that way up there. If you're signing lead jammer and you can't tap your arm on your helmet, you're not holding it up high enough. When you sign lead jammer, your other hand should be pointed at the jammer. You'll continue pointing at the jammer for much of the jam. We'll be talking about that in another lesson. Now, one thing is that if you point directly at the jammer, you actually interfere with your own line of sight. Your hand is blocking your view. So I tend to actually point slightly off. I point maybe about a foot behind the jammer. That's acceptable. Everyone knows what you mean, and it doesn't block the line of sight. Not lead jammer. It's done like this. It should be a slow, controlled movement. Some referees will tend to bring it up too high. They'll be going like this. This is not correct, as this starts looking like the cut penalty. So you shouldn't be doing this. You want to do just a simple not lead jammer. Some referees also have the habit of going like this. This is not correct. The not lead jammer symbol, well, yes, maybe people understand what they mean when they go like this. It should be perpendicular to the floor. So you just go down like this. Nice, easy, gentle movement. It'll be done multiple times, and again, we'll come back to talking about this in another lesson. As a little side note, sometimes you're going to alternate, like not lead jammer, for example, with the reason they are not lead jammer. So you might be like, not lead jammer because they had a forearms penalty. Not lead jammer, forearm. Not lead jammer, forearm. Again, make them slow, distinct movements, but anybody who's looking and sees you alternating the hand signals will understand exactly what it is that you're trying to say. Next, no earned pass. This is formally known as no pass, no penalty, and you will still hear many referees refer to it as that. It's just long-standing habit of calling it no pass, no penalty. Hand signal is done like this. Hold a finger with your left hand. Don't move it, just right there. Other hand rotates around it. This is not correct. This is correct. No earned pass can also be done with two fingers. For example, the jammer passed two people and did not earn a pass on them, or even three, or four. You know, at some point it becomes a little meaningless and obvious what's going on. Now, something you need to know about no earned pass is that oftentimes people are just glancing at you, other officials, for like about 1 instant. That's all they have, because that jammer's taking off and they need to go communicate with them. They don't have time to sit there and count the fingers. So, you know, whether you're doing 1 or 2 or 3, they're probably not going to have time to sit there and, you know, study your hand exactly. So if you have a case where you're doing 2, you might need to communicate with that jammer referee after the jam and say, by the way, that was 2 people there, because they might need to adjust scoring based on that, because they didn't have time to sit and study your fingers in the moment. Some additional hand signals. Star pass complete. Don't know if I'm off camera there or not. It's basically tap your head, lift it up. Team timeout, and then gesture at the bench. Oftentimes you'll add, when you're doing the verbal cue of this, you'll specify the color of the team. Team timeout, white. You know, team timeout, red. Whatever it is. Official timeout. Official review. And we will have all lessons explaining what all this stuff means if you're new to reffing at another time. Finally, 2 penalties, or 3 penalties, or 4 penalties. Sometimes skaters can rack up a whole bunch of penalties before they actually arrive in the penalty box. It's used for communicating to the penalty tracker. You typically tap twice, just as a little dramatic, get their attention. Like that. Like this. The tapping isn't important. What's important is that you're able to communicate to the box the fact that they owe 2 penalties. Oh, and there's actually one more. Jam ending, like this. This is what skaters will do to, or jammers will do to call off the jam. This is also what the referees will mirror back at them. So just tap your hips. You can tap them fast, slow, whatever, as long as you're repeatedly tapping them. Many referees, myself included, will do it in time with, tweet, 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 tweet. Like it may not be that many taps, so I don't have much of a rhythm, but I can get it in a game. There are a few other standardized and non-standardized hand signals that are used by non-skating officials. I'm not discussing those in this program because I'm focused on reffing, but if you've got a few minutes, I suggest asking a skilled NSO about them. Finally, a little bit of homework. I want you to read and study the WIFTA officiating cues, codes, and signals document. I'll put the URL for that in the show notes under the video page on YouTube. I also want you to find an experienced referee to give you the hand signals quiz over there. You should know every hand signal on that list, both expressively and receptively. To assist you in practicing the hand signals you just learned, as well as to serve as sort of a video version of that same quiz, I'm going to cue a video in just a moment. It's going to be Lesson 3C. If you already know your hand signals, you can just skip it and move on. If you're learning the hand signals at present, or you just want to brush up and make sure you've gotten used to the 2018 hand signals set, then I suggest working through it. And we're going to practice both expressively and receptively doing hand signals in that video. And again, the link for all of this stuff will be in the show notes below the video on YouTube. That concludes Lesson 3B. Thank you for tuning in.